Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the I've Got Questions podcast. My name is William Hurst. As always, this is a lovely pre-modern podcast, and it has been a long week. This is probably the longest I've gone between episodes since I started. So, kids are off to school, life is just crazy, but here we are. We are in a post PSS world for myself and my guest. We are joined today by Michael Arnold, another PSS contestant. Mike, how you doing today?
I'm doing great,
Uh,
thanks. Appreciate you having
I,
me
I
on.
always love talking to you and playing with you. So, the goal of this is we're going to talk to Mike and everybody that we can, try and get a retrospective from each contestant because the PSS is such a special time within pre-modern during the year. Get to see cool things, see a lot of your favorite players compete, and it's high level competition. And Mike, can you remind me? Was this your first PSS, or have you done others? I'm trying to remember.
So I actually got to be in the first season of the
Okay.
PSS, and I made top four in that one. Did fairly well. It was great experience, especially being just the first group. It was quite yeah, just being able to kind of blaze that trail. It was a lot of fun. And so yeah, in season five that we just wrapped up, or you and I at least wrapped up. They're still you know pending the
Mm,
finals here. Um, yeah, so we were both able to compete in this latest season.
gotcha. So, was the first PSS? Now, this PSS was definitely a not a spice challenge. This was a more or less run and gun, try and bring the best decks you can, more on the competitive, less on the originality spice. How did that compare to that first season that you were in? Was it kind of that same level? Was it more spicy? What was the difference between kind of the two seasons?
Well, I think where we were at, we were pretty much bringing competitive decks. However, this was kind of mid
Mm-hmm.
2020 that we were playing, and certainly compared to back then, um, the metagame was a lot more unknown as far as uh, just kind of matchups, how everything
Mm-hmm.
worked in the meta, and things were still developing. People were trying out a lot of new ideas. Things were fresh, but there were definitely some things there. For instance, like I played Angry Hermit in that one, but we hadn't actually realized that hey, you could easily fit the Stifle Knot
Mm.
combo in with Angry Hermit. And even further down the load, it's like, oh, you could actually do Angry Hermit plus Full English Breakfast at the same time. I also brought elves, and I did not have survival of the fittest in that version of elves. So you see a lot of kind of like those building blocks. Andrew Walker, he brought land tax scroll rack oath deck, um, but it wasn't anything like what Rich Shea and Lanny Huang have brought to this most recent PSS, and which has since been
Mm-hmm.
banned.
So yeah, definitely you can see. I mean, you're in that almost a unique perspective of you got to be in the first one and now the latest iteration, so you get to see where it was the beginning and the end, and it just sounds like the building blocks, obviously within a closed format, are there. It's just over this amount of time, it has now been refined, and we've found the strategies. What can we fit in? So that's a really cool perspective to get. I know you said in your first one you made top four, did really well. What was your thought when when Flint reached out to you and said, "Hey, would you like to be part of season five?" Kind of where were you at?
Well, I had like already lined up kind of what my three decks were going to be because I had a couple of years at this point to really just kind of look back on the original PSS and be like, it, this is kind of how it works, and bringing three different decks to each week and being able to choose between, and having the band system. And I was just like ready to go and fire off my three decks, and because I feel that in these especially when it's open deck lists, you know what your opponent can be
Mm-hmm.
on. I think that control and prison decks really have the
Mm-hmm.
advantage in something like that. Um, and so I was just ready to bring in Pit Rack, Stasis, and Pink Prison.
Mm-hmm.
for those, and just like three prison decks, pick your
Uh huh.
poison. And I could just kind of corner anything out. That was the whole idea. And if there's something that really was strong against, uh, those three decks combined, I could just ban that one
Hmm.
deck and not have to worry about it. It's fine. But otherwise, Pink Prison is extremely strong against aggro decks and then opposing control decks with all like the stacks pieces. And then Pit Rack again is very good against combo, very good against uh, creature decks, and then Stasis, is I think, a little bit weaker to the aggro decks, but then it's very strong against, combo and opposing control decks. So that was kind of my original thinking, and then I got the rules update, for how like we're doing the ban system this time, and my dreams were shattered at
So
that
how
point.
do I had that same thought, and I've definitely not been playing Premodern as long as yourself and others, but like, so I'd seen the PSS. It's like, man, if I ever got the opportunity to get in this is what I'd like to do. And I had the same line of your thought
Mm-hmm.
was either like three of the same deck. Like mine was three. Like I want to bring three combo decks, like
Mm-hmm.
all with different things. Here's a Lurin, here's like um what's it called with the sapphire and the brain freeze, and I can't remember their name for it,
Oh,
like
Frantic
frantic
Storm.
storm, and here's
Yeah.
this, like pick what you want to play against. And I had that same thought too, but um how quickly did your thoughts change when you learned that we're not banning decks, uh we're instead playing all of them on a rotating, well, you got to play all three and then reset it? And how did that change how you put things together?
Oh yeah, I went through a lot of uh, different lines of thinking with what I was going to do next. Um, and I did like the idea of having some sort of theme in
Hmm.
there. So I did ask Flint if I could bring a mono red Ponza, mono green Ponza, and mono black
Hmm.
Ponza, but I was sadly shut down
Wow.
with with that idea.
Wow.
Um, I did think about bringing three tribal decks. That was another one. I also thought about bringing like the B sides, some decks which are definitely can win
Hmm.
games, but have kind of like fallen out of favor in the metagame. So examples like Pattern Rector,
Okay.
Turbo Lands, and Merfolk. I spent way too much time trying to force Merfolk um, into the PSS, but I figured I could, especially like a tribal theme. It really would work. Particularly with like the open deck lists, because if anyone is packing 3 to 4 engineered plagues in one of their sideboards, they just save that deck,
Hmm.
for
Yeah.
me. I did try to think of like if I could do three combo decks as well. Um, I think some of the most powerful ones out there are going to be some form of hermit, whether that's with Feb or whether that's with Stifle Knot, and then Devourer combo. I really enjoy Devourer combo. It's something I brought to a couple of events, and then the third one could be something like a Replenish or Frantic Storm, something along those lines. But I kind of went back to kind of my idea that you want to, in prepping for this, you want to take advantage of that open deck list. So I was like, well, the best way to do that is to play a Cabal Therapy deck and to play a Meddling Mage deck.
Hmm.
And so that's what I ended up settling on right there. So have Natural Order Rock, which I helped to really brew up what is kind of like the core
Hmm.
list that you're now seeing. I worked on that with Anton Glanz and Jared Doucette last September,
Hmm.
October-ish. Um, and so I decided to bring that one. I made top eight of a monthly earlier this year with Star Spangled Slaughter slash
Hmm.
Patriot, and that deck really utilizes Meddling Mage quite well because it's got, of course, Mother of Runes to protect, and then it's got a bunch of cantrips to be able to find the
Hmm.
Meddling Mage. And then I had to round it out with a third mid-range deck. Being the theme, it had to be some sort of mid-range, and I played my Tainted Ale deck. And I've made a top 16 with it. I don't think I made top 8 with it. It's been a couple of years, but I did 5-1 my pod with it. and it got people talking about it. I really do love Tainted Pact. And so I also had this, kind of crazy idea, which has been brewing in my mind since Dominaria Remaster came out, is to make an all new, bordered
Mm-hmm.
version of this deck. And so, yeah, I was like, when I saw like you were going to be in the list, this the gears started turning
Yeah.
in my
I
head.
just gave you that little final nudge to make the dream a reality. Is that what that was? Well,
Absolutely, absolutely. It was a fun little project to be able to complete. So yeah, all new bordered,
mm,
secret layers in there and everything, and even got like a horrendous. It's the Amonkhet
mm-hmm.
invocation,
Yeah.
Vindicate, um, in there, which sadly didn't get to play, but it was nice to work on that little collection there. So rounded out with that. In hindsight, probably should have brought something like Terrageddon,
Mm-hmm.
if I want to be like with the mid range plan, and be the most competitive, because there were several, like, one of the strengths of Dead Guy is that it's very good against
Mm-hmm.
combo, in particular, but the main combo deck that we saw in the PSS was
Yeah.
Replenish, and Dead Guy is not very good against Replenish. I think Terrageddon is much
Mm-hmm.
better in that spot, because of being able to chain together Wastelands and the mana denial, everything like that. And I was hoping that you would bring Fluctuator up against Dead Guy. Um,
Yeah.
but when I saw you play Stasis, round one, I was like, my hopes were dashed. I'm like, I'm gonna get Sly. I'm pretty
Yeah.
confident of that.
I mean, that's one of the things. I'm still working up how I'm going to go over my PSS. I've asked if somebody wants to like kind of reverse interview me or if I want to write it up. I learned a lot of great lessons from this PSS. And one of those, on a side tangent, was like, if you're gonna bring a deck, you need to be confident with your ability to play the deck. And
Mhm,
in my case,
absolutely.
I was not confident with Fluctuator. I took a gambit and I got cold feet in spots, and it ended up costing me within this probably. But for you, it sounds like these are all decks you had played before. These are I'm confident in
Mhm.
these. Um, First off, I hope I didn't dash any hopes by not realizing what you were doing with your Dead Guy Ale, because I just like I'm playing Magic. I'm like, whatever, it's cards. I don't know. And then somebody let me in on it. I was
it,
like, oh, I feel bad that I didn't get that.
it kind of makes the joke even better.
Yeah, I can see that.
That it just went like straight
Yeah, it's
over
just
your
because that's
head.
how I would. If those were
you
the
know,
cards I'd had, that's what I would have played too. Like whatever, it's what I have. Cool. Um.
yeah.
So I love the ingenuity there, and also we have to talk about, was it now 62 cards? 62 cards.
62 card Secret Force specifically. So our good friend BK, knows uh, the Jamie Wakefield, who is one of like the great early writers of Magic. He was just a regular writer on the dojo. He published a couple books just with his kind of. So he's like one of the fathers of the tournament
Mm-hmm.
report. Um, and I think he's able to combine a lot of good strategy in there, while also being able to appeal to everyone's kind of like inner Timmy
Mm-hmm.
power gamer. Um, he's known as the king of the fatties. That's him. So, and one of his things that he always did early in his Magic career is he played 62 card decks with 26 lands. That was his golden ratio. Um, and when I had played this Dark Secret or Natural Order Rock, it was a 60 card deck, 24 lands. But I was like, for this, we're gonna make it, something special. So, uh, I try to have that mentality just with this PSS. Just do some things for
Mm-hmm.
whimsy, and some things for just like kind of community building. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
important, because sometimes we can be a little too
Sure.
serious, here in pre-modern, but it's fun to do these things every once in a while just for good jokes.
I
I feel that used to be a big part of just Magic in general. But yeah, so ran 62 cards, 26 lands, and yeah, I know that BK sent the message to Jamie that it's like, hey, there's this guy who's running a Secret Force deck with your golden ratio. You should tune in. And he caught the PSS and would really enjoy the commentary and the production, everything that went there. So
Awesome.
that was pretty special.
That's awesome.
Just to kind of bring in someone who is just been a huge influence to the community in general.
And that's really cool within this community. And I'm definitely on, as everybody who's listening know, I'm definitely more on the competitive end. So I'm on that end of the spectrum. But I think there's a great value in what you say. Is do also need to remember that we can, even being competitive, you can still community build. You can still do things like 62 card decks. And I think somewhere for my purpose, I lost that somewhere in the PSS. I think I lost. Lanny says, when he was talking after our match, and it was like I couldn't beat Will
Yeah.
because Will was having fun. I lost the fun at some point. I don't know exactly when
Mm-hmm.
that happened, and I regret it a little bit because it made the whole experience maybe a little bit more stressful than it had to be for me. Um, but
Mm-hmm.
I think you make a very solid point. Like we got to remember that this is fun. We can have fun. We can experiment, and that the end result isn't always the end. Like not the end positive, but like what the positive is when we do this. So I think that's a
Mm-hmm.
great point to make. And then people like BK, I have the pleasure of working with BK every day because he's my boss. But in general, like his knowledge of Magic, and then like with my Flores coming in, like all these kind of people that you hear from old days, and now they're bringing more like people like Zvi Mauschwitz is into it, Osip Levidavic, like names like that I remember as a kid. Like it's cool to see that, and it's cool that you were able to get an homage out for Mr. Wakefield. He got to see it and respond to it, so that's awesome, in my opinion.
And I will have to say I broke the ratio in my round three against Tom, and that's the only round that I lost with Secret Force right
Mm,
there. So I was able to take it down against Alvaro, and then also against who was the next one? Why am I blanking?
uh,
It was
Rich, yep.
Rich. So I beat Rich on goblins, and then in round 7 for my winning in, I sided out 2 Mistress Factories, going down to just 24
No.
lands in the 62 card deck, and I lost the match as a result.
Mm.
So, and specifically, I went back and was reading the comments, and Robin Lund is like, "How could you side out the factories?
Oh,
They're
Robin,
so good in the
they
matchup."
are.
And then, of course, it breaks the ratio,
Mm-hmm.
which is even
That's
worse.
that's bad. I can't believe you would go that far. Choices were made. But kind of backing up a
Mhm,
little bit, once we kind of got going and you saw who you're facing, we essentially had a block one, a block two, and then like a final match. How did you
mhm.
approach trying to line up your decks initially throughout the event?
Yeah. So it's funny because I basically played the order 3 times in a row. I did Secret Force, Dead Guy Ale,
Uh-huh.
Patriot, and I just repeated that.
Was that on
you know,
purpose or did that just shake
ending
out
with
that way?
it just kind of shook out
Okay.
that way. So originally, like when I looked at Alvaro's, kind of matchup, so he's got Ponza, he's got Stiflenot, he's got Tinker Stacks, and I think the most solid deck against those would be Secret Force because Ponza really preys on mid-range decks in particular. But Secret Force is not your average mid-range deck. It can just go over the
Mm-hmm.
top. So I got mana screwed, gained one, and he just took advantage of it. And then I was just able to go over the top in games 2 and 3. Game 3, I had turn 3 natural order off of a wall of
Mm-hmm.
roots, which he just couldn't possibly remove. So was able to just go over the top there. Um, and then I'd already had Dead Guy Ale reserved for you
Figures.
at
Yep.
that point. So I have to play that one. Patriot would have lined up really well against Francisco
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Polacek, who was originally in the PSS, but he did have to back out last minute. Um, so his lineup originally was Landstill, Feb, and then Blue White Stiflenot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And Patriot, I'm as a decent land still matchup. It's not, I wouldn't say it's favored for Patriot, but it's pretty
Hmm.
solid. And then I'm very confident in the Stifle Knot matchup, and I like the Hermit Feb is like it's a very good matchup
Yep.
for Patriots. So I had to play a win and then a top 16 match against both Robin Lund and Dunkers.
Hmm.
Let's see, why am I
I'm trying to
uh,
remember his name too.
blanking on Dunker's actual name because I just know him on Discord so well. I should know it because I see him, but McLean
Okay.
Denny. Um, and so I had to play those two when I made the top eight, and I 2-0'd, 4-0'd against those two like very good Fed players. So I'm like, I am just set to have Patriot against Francisco, and then Lanny came in last minute. I'm like, well, I already know I've playing Secret Force week one, and I've got Dead Guy lined up, so I'm kind of priced into Patriot um, game three. And just if I would have landed against any other deck um, besides Parfait, I don't think the matchup for Patriot is that terrible against Parfait, but it's also not like the
Hmm.
best. Um, uh, he instead had replenish, which again, meddling mage plus counter spells just very good
Hmm.
against. And he's got Growatog, but he doesn't have a lot of removal
Hmm.
in his deck. So I would have felt very confident against those other ones, and just ended up against Parfait. Uh, and then for the next one, I got Natural Order Rock again against Rich. It just felt like it was um, the best deck against the combination of goblins and Parfait and then Stifle Knot. It's a very solid deck in general. Next up were Jared Doucette, who could have brought at that point Replenish or Rock. And then I've got Jeff White, who at the time he can bring either Elves or Replenish. So they both possibly have
Hmm.
Replenish. And when like I listened to Rich's commentary on this match, he was very surprised that I brought Dead Guy against Jared.
Hmm.
He's like, you have to bring Patriot. But if you think about it, when both Jared and Jeff could possibly bring up Replenish, I already know that Patriot's the best deck against either, like against
Hmm.
Replenish. It's the one that I want to bring, but I can only bring it once
Right.
against either of those two players. So you actually have to think about it. What is the deck that I want to bring up against the backup deck, the non-replenish deck? And I can bring Dead Guy against the Rock, which Dead Guy can, card for card, grind out very well um, against the Rock. Um, or, and I could bring Dead Guy against possibly Elves.
Okay.
And my when you look at the difference, yeah, Dead Guy versus Patriot on the Elves matchup, it's Patriot hands down.
Hmm.
Just with all the removal that's available, plus the pyroclasms out of the sideboard. Um, Dead Guy only has like the swords to plowshares. You're hoping to get to the late
Hmm.
game where you can get a Masticore and kind of lock things up. Got a couple engineered plagues, or did I even have plagues? I might not even have plagues. I might have just had infest
Yeah, I don't
in
remember
the
that if you had
sideboard.
plagues or not. Mm,
I'll have to double
fair
check
enough.
that, but um, definitely like Patriot is just loaded up with
Hmm.
removal. Patriot has a very good um, Elves matchup. I've played it on both sides, quite a bit before because I'm a big Elves player. Um, and so that's the matchup that I wanted, and that's the matchup that I got is Patriot versus Jeff White on
Hmm.
Elves.
Yep. And then, so you went into this pretty well, and you said you had a winning in. Was it a winning in the last week? You said right.
It was, yeah, just because the way that the tiebreakers
Hmm.
went. So I would have beat out Lanny for the 4-3 spot if we both landed there.
Gotcha.
Um, because yeah, just my record against the other 4-3s would have been better. I would have been 2-1. Rich would have been 2-1 against the group of 4-3s,
Hmm.
and then Lanny would have been 1-2.
Did you have any nerves at all going into a winning in? Like, how set were you? Like, does I really want a top four versus I'm just having fun? Like, where were you kind of at with that winning in situation?
Yeah, I didn't take it, overly seriously. It would have been nice, obviously, to top
Hmm.
four. But something that you need to know about me, my work is very
Sure.
seasonal. And so I am incredibly busy during the
Got ya.
summertime. So I don't have the, just don't have the time to be able to devote to a lot of
Hmm.
playtesting or anything like that. So it's like, if I win, great. If I don't, no problem. It was a very close match. It could have swung either way. Uh, but yeah, it's kind of like happened in the PSS. I didn't draw my sideboard cards, and my opponent, did draw
Yeah.
their. Tom had the Armageddon, both, the singleton Armageddon
Hmm.
games 2 and 3.
Yup. And that can kind of,
I seem to remember someone else had their singleton sulfuric vortex
what
against
can I
me
do?
as
I mean, I
well.
used up all my luck against you, and I just didn't catch a win for the rest of the PSS. So, I mean, there's that. Um, so great experience. Brought some cool decks. Let's talk a little bit about kind of the system. We had mentioned before. I think were all PSSs before this band systems. I'm trying to remember.
I am almost certain that they were all the exact same ban
Yeah.
system. So you brought your three
Hmm.
decks, and then your opponent would ban a deck. You wouldn't know which deck they were banning until you also submitted
Hmm.
your deck to ban from their three. And so then you have to choose from your two remaining decks, and they have to choose from their two remaining
Hmm.
decks. And you don't know what they're bringing until you're actually at the
Gotcha.
table and starting the
So,
match.
what do you think about the comparison between the ban system and the play out of your decks recycle? Because one of the things that did happen, at least in the PSS I've watched, is sometimes you just wouldn't see a deck get played, which is sometimes unfortunate. You want to
Hmm.
see it, but there is also the point of like some of what was talked about, both in and out of the specific chat is like it kind of makes week three a little bit blah and not exciting.
Hmm.
So, where did you kind of fall on the spectrum of this system versus a ban system?
Yeah, so I think if you look at it with the goals that Flint and Mike have, and at the end of the day, this is their production that they're
Hmm.
putting on, and they kind of wanted to be a showcase, and they were very concerned that um, that certain decks were getting banned too
Hmm.
often, and they were just getting skipped basically the whole PSS. So I think in that regards, the system really accomplished those
Hmm.
goals. In terms of like the strategy for the PSS, I do think it lost some of that. It was always really interesting, constructing your decks and preparing for the match and be like, okay, you have to consider what are your possible worst matchups in banning a deck, but then you also have to consider what are they going to be banning from you. So you have to maneuver yourself
Hmm.
into the best position. So that I always thought was very interesting, and it also it gave something for people to talk about. Just people, members of the community,
Hmm.
um, to um, to to really be involved in. And as someone like the past 3 years, I've organized a 64 deck single elimination
Hmm.
gauntlet. And I've thought about often, it's just like, as a hobby, just that's one of the main things that we do. This just give the people something to talk
Hmm.
about and to fill up kind of those empty moments in a day. So I do feel that we lost out on some of
Hmm.
that, but I do think that there's also like room to be able to find kind of a medium to accomplish both of those
Hmm.
goals, so that yeah. Every deck is going to have an opportunity to be displayed, and then at the same time it creates some more strategic decisions with a ban system. So it'll be interesting to see what they have going forward. Um, but I can see like the disadvantages of the previous ban
Hmm.
system, and I can also see the disadvantages of just having everything open and kind of decided.
Hmm. And I think when we were talking a little in the chat, and I'm definitely interested too to see because I feel the same way. Obviously didn't have the experience with the band system, but like it did make things. interesting how you're setting up, but then week three, sometimes like you got forced or chose to put yourself in a situation where you're just not winning, a la me putting Fluctuator against Dreadnought twice because that
Mm.
was fun. Um, um, but I think I can't remember who was it. It might have been I cannot remember who had the idea, but there's something to the idea of somebody that said like maybe you bring 4 decks so that way you're still rotating.
I think that was
Was that
Rich's. Yeah,
you're still rotating through 3 or 4, but it leaves at least week 3 a little more strategic, I guess. Maybe I don't know if
hmm
that's the right way to put it, but I think there's probably a happy medium between the two somewhere.
yeah.
But it was really cool to see. So kind of moving on, we're both obviously not continuing on in the PSS. Our travels are
Mm.
done. So
Sad
it is a
day.
very sad day. What, if any, lessons or little tidbits did you pick up in playing this PSS? What did you learn? What were some great experiences? Things you could work on or keep in mind. Just what did you see?
Um, yeah, as far as like lessons learned, well, obviously you never break the
Yeah,
golden
yeah, yeah,
ratio. Um, you gotta do the 62 cards and 26
exactly.
lands.
Rookie mistakes,
Um,
tell you.
yeah, I didn't, spend that much time like really optimizing these lists just because of my work
Yeah.
schedule. I kind of took what I had, recently played, and I made like a couple small changes. One big thing which came back to bite me against my match with Lanny when he was on Parfait. I didn't fully consider um, some of the advantages that my opponent might gain with against my list with the open deck list,
Mm.
because in my Patriot list, I did play against Parfait in that month that I made top eight, and I narrowly lost that match just because game one I mulliganed to six and I bought him to disenchant. It's like that's like the last thing you want to do against
Yeah.
Parfait, but it just happened to be it. However, like my sideboard was quite loaded with, hate cards such as Meltdown and Serenity in there.
Mm.
I switched Serenity out for Cleansing
Oh boy.
Meditation in the PSS, and Cleansing Meditation is just destroys all enchantments.
Hmm.
Um, and if you have Threshold, you get your enchantments back. Uh, but and that worked really well in like pod play, because these are not very common cards that you're used to seeing.
Mm.
Um, I mean, how often have you seen a meltdown played in
Not
pre-modern?
very often.
But they're very potent cards, and so that surprise factor is really important for these hate cards. Whereas Lanny was able to be prepared for those, and you see him playing around it. Like in our matches, he doesn't have like an additional scroll rack out when he doesn't have to.
Hmm.
Um, and in addition to that, Lanny's build with the Burning Wish, he did that to be able to have some additional game against these mid-range decks built to beat the Parfait.
Hmm.
Because otherwise, like I game one, I start off with Mother of Ruins into Meddling Mage on Oath, and usually like Parfait is just kind of dead in the water. You can, uh, while they're scrambling together a way to work around the Meddling Mage, eventually you can just win.
Hmm.
However, I was never fully locked up because he always has the ability to be able to Burning Wish, for something to deal with the Meddling Mage. So yeah, I wasn't prepared for the Burning Wish version of Parfait, but also like my sideboard just wasn't um, hateful enough, and like these cards that I was planning on, swinging the Parfait matchup, weren't as good because it was open deckless.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. Um, but overall, now that you've been through two PSSs, is it safe to say if you were invited back, you would enjoy another opportunity to play in something like this?
Oh, I love it. I mean, the main reason I was disappointed for not making the top four, like I said, I wasn't, taking it too seriously, uh, just with my limited prep ability. But the only reason I wanted to win is to be able to come back, to another
Yeah,
one.
I think that was one of my main goals too. Is trying to get back, and maybe we will. I think me and Jeff are gonna go real hard at Mike and Flynn and say, hey, we need a redemption arc. Just last couple PSSs, our bottom like not top fours or something. We'll figure something out. But yeah, redemption arc. That's what I'm aiming for. Uh
or you come play in the
oh, I
gauntlet,
can't play in the
you know.
gauntlet. There's so much magic and I have so little time. I I think if there's anything you could share, one takeaway from the PSS for anybody who didn't get to watch it, but may listen to this podcast, what would you say about the PSS about why you should watch this every year?
Oh man. If you're questioning like why you should watch the PSS, like why are you even playing
There you
Premodern?
go.
This is, the production value is just incredible. The show that Mike and Flint are able to put on, it's second to none. And I say this as someone who has tried to be able to put some things
Hmm.
together, and I'm very thankful for the stuff that I've been able to do, and very proud of like the limited
Hmm.
um, production value which I've been able to do. The just everything that they really pour a lot into to make this thing special, and it really is like it's some of like the best commentary magic that you'll find. I mean, pre-modern aside, just any format. This is, I mean, it's put on by some of the greatest guys that you'll know, and I mean they do so much just to make it a good show. And like I said, just give you something to talk about and keep it fresh. And they've been doing a great job. You know, it, I started this, just in the middle of the pandemic. Like literally, my first monthly was March 2020 when the world shut
Yep.
down. Like I'm talking to opponents, it's just like, what? How's how are things going where you're at in the world? And
Uh-huh.
and it was just we obviously like did a ton of stuff like during lockdown because there's nothing else to do. And they've been able to keep things fresh and relevant, um, even after all this time, and as the world has opened up, and other things are demanding our time. And the fact that we're still doing this is a real testament to how much work that they put in, and how special their production is.
I can't say it any better than that. So we've talked PSS. It was a great run. It was a great time. But now we come to the most important part of every podcast. I'm going to ask you three questions.
Okay.
What is the most overrated card in pre-modern? What is the most underrated card in pre-modern? And what card needs to or should be broken?
Hmm. These are good questions right here. So let's start off with the most overrated card in
Hmm.
pre-modern. I'm gonna have a hot
I
take right
love
here, and
this.
I'm gonna say duress.
Wow, really? All right, explain to me.
Okay, so I think um, duress, while it's very good
Hmm.
in some circumstances, it can be completely dead in some other matchups,
Sure.
particularly goblins. Like if you're playing against goblins, you just automatically sideboard them out.
Okay.
And they can also be pretty bad against elves. So like even if you hit survival of the fittest, they're like, okay, I just have acolyte plus symbiote, and I'm just going to go
Yep.
crazy. Um, I ran into this against Tom in our match, in that I wasn't able to take Dreadnought. I was like, I really want to take Dreadnought right here, but I can't take Dreadnought.
Okay.
You can't take creatures.
Gotcha.
So there are just things like that come up. Um, and someone like on the Discord recently was like, okay, I only have room for like duress or therapies. Like, what should I run? I'm pretty new to the format, so I'm not feeling good about therapy. But really, I think that if it's one or the other, I think therapy probably just does so much more for
Ooh.
you.
I think I'm on the other side of that particular one, but it's definitely something you have to really think about. Okay, so duress.
Yeah, but you're a stasis
That's also
player though,
true.
so
I just against the black decks, I just never keep an opening hand with stasis in it. That's just a bad idea. Um,
Hmm.
so what is the most underrated card in pre-modern?
Hmm. I'm gonna. Yeah, I've been brewing around with a lot of
Hmm.
stuff, this last year, and I've been fortunate to be able to have some success with these, and I've been brewing around a lot of cards which I feel are like the best cards no one's playing. So things like natural
Hmm.
order, contamination, that sort of thing. So um, fortunately, like some of those cards are no longer as underrated as they have been. Um, that's something I'm quite proud of. But I would say that probably the most underrated card is Skeletal Scrying.
Okay, I see. This is one I can get behind, and I think some of that is, for what it's worth, Skeletal Scrying, I think it's been fixed, but for a long, 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 long time was bugged on Moto.
Okay.
It just same reason like Feb can't be played on Moto because Volrath's is bugged
Yeah.
on there. Like it was one of those cards, but now because I just played against a gentleman in the MLS league, shout out to them, another great opportunity to play, who was running Skeleton Scrying, so no longer bugged. But yeah, tell us why you think it's very underrated.
Yeah, it's just some of the best card advantage on rate that you're going to be able to find, and there's a lot of ways to be able to recruit the life loss that you get for skeletal scrying. Um, but yeah, I've run it in a couple different decks recently. One was just like a mono black control with Cabal Coffers,
Hmm.
and I filled up my yard just with normal spells, but also I was running 8 fetches
Hmm.
in there. And let me tell you, it's pretty sweet when your opponent goes like into turn Factor Fiction, you're like, okay, response, I'll draw 5.
Exactly.
You know,
And I've had something
it's
similar
like,
to that I was playing with is the a mono black control deck that was like that also has Ivory Tower, so it's Ivory Tower on your EOT,
mhm,
Skeletal Scrying for a bunch, then just gain the life back. So I, I
mhm.
think I think that's a space I want to see more. And are you going to break it for me? Or are you going to make it popular?
And I've got some decks which I finished 3-3 with, so
All
hopefully
right.
I can revisit them at some point. Another one was just like a hatred deck
Okay.
with you know, basically the idea was skeletal scrying functioned a lot like
Mm-hmm.
hatred. So if I had a hand without hatred, skeletal scrying was the way to do it. And I had 3 Lake of the Deads in that deck. No fetch lands.
Mm.
But maybe if I brew up an aggro black deck without hatred and make Anton Glance happy, um, I can kind of like bridge those two ideas because skeletal scrying is quite good in an aggro deck to kind of refill you,
Mm-hmm.
or like if they Wrath of God, and you're like, okay, that's fine. I'll just exile all my creatures you destroyed and I'll draw 4.
Right.
You know, I'll just be right back in it.
Gotcha.
Um, so there might be something there with fetch lands to fill up the yard, Lake of the Dead, just to do big mana stuff or
Mm-hmm.
just dump a lot of mana into Nantico Shade, that type of thing. So yeah, there might be something there.
Awesome. I love that. And then lastly, what is a card that needs to be broken or should be broken in pre-modern?
All right, that is a hard question. I got to think about this one for
Mm-hmm.
a little bit.
I asked the tough ones here. You can't dodge them.
Yeah, because if it's not, you know, I'm trying to think of one which doesn't fit that bill. Uh, Overrated, underrated. Um, it's just something different. Um, I would love to say mystical tutor because free mystical
Yeah,
tutor.
agreed.
That's
Agreed. Let's do this,
that's my
please.
my stance there.
Uh-huh.
But okay. Um, okay. I will kind of give two answers here because it has to do with the Dream Halls
All
deck,
right, there it is.
and these are two cards which I always want to see in Dream
Mm-hmm.
Halls. So Prophetic Bolt, which is an impulse plus 4
Yep.
damage. Um, pretty sweet with Dream Halls. And then let's see. Okay, Ancestral Knowledge.
That's one.
This
Yep.
is like, yeah, this a beautiful card. It's 2 and 3 blue, and you get to look at the top 7 cards of your library and put 2 of them into your hand, the others in your graveyard. Sadly, it's a sorcery. If this was an instant, it would immediately kind of like you'd have to make a decision whether you're playing this or Fact or Fiction. It's the original. Um, what's the restricted ban card with
Oh,
Delve? That
not
I'm
Treasure Cruise, right?
not. It's not the Treasure
Um,
Cruise. It's the
Dig
Dig
Through
Through
Time.
Time.
There it is.
That's it.
Yep.
Yeah. So Ancestral Knowledge, very similar to Dig Through Time, right there.
Absolutely.
And yeah, sadly, if Ancestral Knowledge was an instant, it would be immediately playable.
Mm-hmm.
It's still kind of like semi-playable in Dream Halls, but it probably loses out, to something like a Rush of Knowledge. But it's such a sweet card.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I love it.
I would agree with it. I like that call right there. All right, Mike. So we're coming up on an hour. We've talked PSS. We've talked fun times and cards. Do you got anything you'd like to kind of plug or talk to the audience? Any maybe YouTube channels? Anything? Any gauntlets that may be in the future things? What do we got?
Yeah, so we typically start up the gauntlet in mid-October, and it's a curated list of 56 decks. There will definitely be some shakeups this year because now, we're starting it with the knowledge that Show and Tell is unbanned. That got spoiled like as we were putting together our decks, so that changed some things, and now we have land tax ban. So there will definitely be some winners and some losers in that list of 56. But yeah, you can find my YouTube channel, which is Blade of Llanowar, and then my Twitch channel is Elendral, which is my Discord name. You can find me there, and yeah, we'll be doing some matches here in the fall. It's always a good time for the gauntlet. I use a website where I can generate a prediction bracket, and that's always like the most fun. So you can actually do kind of like you would like a March Madness,
Awesome.
and you can fill out how you think that the bracket's going to
I
proceed.
love that. All right, Mike. Well, it has been a wonderful conversation with you. It's always a pleasure. Congratulations on strong showing in the PSS top four, notwithstanding. Um, Great insights from being in the first one to the latest one, and I can't thank you enough for taking some time out of your day to talk with me.
Yeah, absolutely, it was a
All
pleasure.
right. Everybody, remember, go ahead, check out this podcast. Check out all the other podcasts. I can't name them all because now there are entirely too many. That's another change in this last year. It was like at 3 or 4 things, and now all of a sudden there's a bunch, which is great. Check out the
Mhm.
podcasts. Check out the PSS recaps and live streams. That final's coming up. Play your monthlies. Play in the MOS. Euros is coming up. 1.5K in New York. I mean, there's too much. There's too much. But we're gonna say goodbye for now. Have a wonderful evening and take care, everyone.